My name is Antoinette Dicarlo, and this is my lesson plan for SPED 602 with Professor Zankin at the Toro College Graduate School of Education. So, what we're going to be discussing today is the classification of living things, and the title of my lesson is called Animal Diversity. Students will be learning today about classifying animals in different categories based on their similarities. The subject that we'll be covering is science, and it is appropriate for the grade 3 level. The materials that we'll be using today to conduct this lesson is an item sorting worksheet, animal sorting worksheet, a PowerPoint presentation, and pictures of animals from different classification groups. We'll be using the item sorting worksheet to make sure that students have a basic understanding of how things are categorized and classified, and we'll be using an animal sorting worksheet at the beginning and the end of the lesson to ensure that students have understood what they have been taught. This science lesson will focus on animal classification. Students will explore the distinguishing characteristics of each of the 5 classes of vertebrates, which are fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. My presentation is called Animals in the Wild, and this will be the opening slide that I will introduce to my students when conducting my PowerPoint. By the end of this lesson, students should be able to understand science classification groups that all animals on the basis of certain characteristics they have in common. So some target vocabulary that we want to reach today and make sure that students have a good understanding of by the time the lesson is complete are as follows: vertebrates, invertebrates, classification, cold-blooded, and warm-blooded. Prior to this lesson, students should be familiar with the term classification. They should also know what causes things to be grouped together, why it is important for certain things to be grouped together, and know that animals have basic needs and exist all over Earth, but must have a habitat to meet their basic needs. So before starting this lesson, I just want to ask a question to the class of what do you think classification means? And why is it important that we classify things into groups? And this is something that they should already have knowledge on and something that we just want to retouch and have be refreshed in their minds. So after we've touched upon why it is important to classify things and the meaning of classification, today we'll start learning about how to properly classify animals into groups according to their similarities. We'll look at various animals and learn how to group them together based on their characteristics. To start the lesson, I want to ensure that students understand the meaning of classification and the importance of classifying things into groups. Starting the lesson, we will be completing a worksheet on the following slide, and we'll be cutting and pasting the items that belong together in their baskets. This will give me an understanding that students know how to group things together. And we'll start with things as basic as colors. Once we've done this basic object worksheet, we'll move on to completing the animal sorting worksheet. So here's what the first worksheet will look like. I'll have the students cut out the items and paste them in order of the basket that they belong. The blue things should all be grouped together, which include the eggs, the butterfly, the blueberries, and the bird, followed by the red things, which include the wagons, the strawberries, the apples, and lastly, the green things, which include the pickles, the leaves, the celery. Students should be able to master this and have a basic understanding of how we group things together based on similarities. After they have completed the first item sorting worksheet, I will ask the students how they think living things are classified, what the two main classes of groups of living things are, and if all animals are the same. I will then ask if animals can be grouped in any way based on their similarities, just like items can be. Followed by the item sorting worksheet, I will distribute an animal sorting worksheet. So, same concept as the item sorting worksheet, except the students will now be cutting out the animals and pasting them together based on the classification group that they think that they belong to. Again, this will be done prior to the lesson to see where they stand on this topic. They will cut out the animals and place them into the correct columns. Here's the animal worksheet that they will complete. They will cut out the animals that are on the top and put them into the correct categories in which they think that they belong to. Next, I will introduce the PowerPoint lesson to the class and ensure that they have an understanding of what some of the terms that they will be seeing in the presentation. Therefore, some vocabulary that we would like to touch on before we get started is vertebrate, invertebrate, warm-blooded, and cold-blooded. These are some terms that they'll be seeing throughout the PowerPoint, so we should ensure that they have a basic understanding of what these terms mean. I will now use the PowerPoint presentation to introduce the groups of animals based on their classification groups. At the end of each slide, the students will be asked to come up with a few animals that they believe may also fall into the particular category. I will also have some examples shown if they cannot seem to come up with an idea. The first group that we want to touch on is the largest classification group called mammals. I will touch on who mammals are. They are warm-blooded animals with fur or hair on parts of their body. They have 4 limbs, and I've provided some examples on what types of mammals there are. We also are going to learn what mammals eat. There are 2 types of mammals: carnivores, which eat meat, and herbivores, which eat plants. The places that mammals live may be on dry land or water. Some examples are desert, tropics, forests, ocean. Now's the time that I'm going to ask the class if they can name other types of mammals. I'll go around the room and call students based on what they think. I will then, if they cannot seem to come up with any other examples, show them the next slide, which are a few examples that I've come up with of mammals, and show them that mammals are not only things that live on land, but for example, fish like whales that live in the water. The next group we're going to touch on are reptiles. Reptiles are cold-blooded animals covered in scales. They have either no legs or 4 legs. Some examples of reptiles are turtles, snakes, and crocodiles. They may eat meat or plants. They live mostly on dry land near bodies of water. Some examples are the desert, tropics, and forests. I will now ask the class if they can name other types of reptiles. After they have raised their hand and given some ideas of what they think reptiles are, I will then show them the next slide of a few examples I've come up with as reptiles. Next are amphibians. Amphibians are cold-blooded animals, terms that now my students should be familiar with. They have soft, moist skin, 4 legs without nails or claws. Some examples of amphibians are frogs and salamanders. They mostly eat meat. Some examples are small insects or mammals. They survive in many different habitats, from everywhere from forests, springs, streams, rivers, lakes, and swamps. I will ask the class if they can name some other types of amphibians other than the examples that I've provided. Again, to ensure their understanding, I will show them my examples of some types of amphibians that I have come up with. The next topic are fish. Fish are cold-blooded animals covered in scales or smooth, leathery skin. They have gills to breathe and fins to move. Some examples are sharks, stingrays, salmon, and cod. They mostly eat meat, or others eat plants. Fish live in the water. Can you name other types of fish? Once students have given me their answers, I will provide them with what my answer is of what defines a fish. Next are birds. Birds are warm-blooded animals, covered in feathers and have a beak. They are able to fly with 2 wings. Some examples of birds are a bald eagle, blue jay, or a peacock. They mostly eat seeds, worms, fish, fruit, and insects. And they live in diverse habitats near bodies of water. Some examples are desert, rainforests, beaches, etc. Can you name other types of birds? Here are my examples of what I think defines a bird. Lastly, we will talk about insects, the last out of the 5 vertebrates. Insects have smooth skin without any covering. They have wings and can fly, and at least 3 pairs of legs. Some examples of insects are spiders, crabs, centipedes. They mostly eat leaves, roots, seeds, and wood, and sometimes other small creatures. And they live in all habitats, mostly on land. What are some types of insects that you can come up with that you would think fall into this category? Here are a few examples of mine. How about mosquitoes, flies, butterflies, and ladybugs? The next part of the lesson, I will show pictures of various animals, such as the ones that I have just provided in the last few slides. And I will end the titles of the classification groups once the PowerPoint presentation is completed. I will then allow the students to come up and work together to group the animals into their proper classification groups to ensure their understanding. Once the lesson has been completed, we will be revisiting our animal sorting worksheet. I'll have the students review it and compare to what they thought defines each vertebrate in the beginning of class. Since the lesson is now complete and they should have an understanding of where each animal falls into which category, they will review this worksheet and fix any of their mistakes that they made in the beginning of class. For any student that may not be able to participate in certain activities, I will make adjustments based on their individual needs. For example, if they need help with motor skills such as cutting, pasting, and sorting animals in their animal worksheets distributed at the beginning of class. Of course, ask the students if they have any questions at the end of the lesson regarding it. I want them to take a look around the environment and try to categorize some other objects, as well as animals, to make sure that they have an understanding of what we discussed today, and also try and group them based on their characteristics. Try and point out what animals have which certain characteristics in common, and what group would they fall under based on their characteristics. And that is my lesson plan for SPED 602, Antoinette Dicarlo. Thank you.